All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making the plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Welcome inside the pen, everybody. I am your host, Austin Stance. Our producer backstage tonight is Tony. Tony, thank you so much for producing this show tonight. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. There's a lot to cover. We got a lot on tap today to cover for the call to the pen. So we're going to start off by our top 5 winners and losers of the offseason. So, and before I get into that, really, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Boston Red Sox. They almost made this list. They had Yoshida get signed from Japan on a 5-year, $90 million deal. I thought that was a really good move, but there were some better moves in the offseason, so they did not miss the list, but they are an honorable mention. Going forward, we have the Cubs on here at number 1. The Cubs last year went 74-88, and to be honest, I actually thought that was pretty good for them considering, the players that they had and, what they were expected to do through the season. They signed Dansby Swanson in the offseason, which I thought was a huge move by them. I know they wanted to go after some different guys like Carlos Correa, Trey Turner. They were all in the talks for those guys, but ended up landing Dansby Swanson. And I am in no way, shape, or form disappointed by that by any means. Dansby Swanson in 2022 had a wins above replacement of about 6. So 6 of WAR for him. His batting average was .277 with 25 homers and 96 RBIs. That was a heck of a season for him. And if he can bring that production to Chicago, they are definitely going to have a good offense going, especially with everyone else that they have behind them. The prospects that are coming up, we're seeing Pete Crow Armstrong, displaying his skills in spring training here. Matt Mervis, Patrick Wisdom, Ian Happ's coming back. He's excited. So it's definitely going to be a good transition this year for the Cubs, especially with their pitching. They definitely made some improvements on there by signing Jamison Tyone. Last year he went 14-5 with a 3.91 ERA. Now I know a lot of people think that he might not be a number 1 starter, and I could probably agree with that, but I think he's going to bring some good leadership and some, performance to this rotation. He's never pitched over 200 innings. That's my biggest concern. He has averaged about 30 starts per season, which that's all we can ask. But if he's not getting past that 200 inning mark, then he's usually about a 5, maybe 6 inning guy if you're lucky. Brad Boxberger was also signed in the offseason. He had an ERA at 2.95, 70 games and 68 strikeouts. So in 70 games, he got 68 strikeouts, which means he typically about have 1 strikeout every appearance that he came out of the bullpen. So I can definitely work with that. I think he's going to bring some much needed assistance in the bullpen. And then Tucker Barnhart is a 2-time Gold Glove winner. I think he's going to win the spot behind the plate. I think he just has a repetition of building good connections with his pitchers. He has a ton of ability to be able to frame in position behind the umpire or in front of the umpire. I think he's a great catcher defensively. Now, obviously, the Chicago Cubs, their big loss here was Wilson Contreras. I would say if I was grading them, the Cubs on a scale of A to F, I would give them a B because they lost Wilson Contreras to the St. Louis Cardinals. You let him go to a rival. I mean, you let him go first of all, but then you let him go to a rival after that. That was a huge mistake on their part, especially with his offensive performance. He may not be the best framer in the game, may not be the best defensively behind the plate, but I will tell you what, he had one of the strongest arms back there, and that was very dependable. And when his bat came up in the lineup, you could definitely see him, being feared at the plate. So that was a big loss for us, but I think Tucker Barnhart's going to provide some great defense behind the plate. I would definitely say that my next winner on this list is going to be the Mets. Obviously, they've added a lot of key components to their team. Justin Verlander, 175 ERA last year, 175 strikeouts, and in 28 games. So, I mean, that guy's a monster. I think that he is somehow reinvented himself coming from Detroit, over to Houston and stuff like that. I don't know how he did it. I don't know what kind of, milkshakes he's drinking, but I need some. But it's probably not milkshakes, and that's probably why I'm not in the MLB. So, but on top of that, they added David Robertson, and I was thrilled with that because he is a great guy to come out of the bullpen, can give you a strong, solid inning, get you out of some jam situations, and just reliable overall. He had a 2.70 ERA, and he had 30 strikeouts last year, which I thought was definitely important for him, especially in 23 innings pitched. 30 strikeouts, he's throwing it by him pretty well. So he's got good movement on his pitches, a good fastball. I definitely was happy to see that the Mets acquired him in the offseason. Jose Quintana. I think, a lot of people don't like him. A lot of people don't really even know that he's still playing, it seems like. I think he's a very under-the-radar pitcher. Last year, he went 2.93 ERA in 32 games. And for me, that's a second, third guy rotation. So that guy is not, to me, he's not a fifth guy starter, not a sixth guy starter. He's not a back end guy. He's a middle of your rotation, will give you solid innings. Let me see here. He had 137 strikeouts last year. So, I mean, he's not, Justin Verlander. He's not Noah Syndergaard, or guys that are getting, almost 200 strikeouts, Shohei Ohtani, guys like that. But Jose Quintana will give you a solid performance every outing, and he always gives his best out there. So, I'm not biased because, he was with the Cubs. I just think that he has a really good repertoire of pitches, and I think he definitely brings a lot to the table to any team that he goes to. So that was a really good move on the New York Mets organization part to bring him in. Omar Narvaez, he has a career 7 wins above replacement, but last year he didn't even have a +1 wins above replacement. So last year wasn't his year. If he can bounce back and give the performance that the Mets need him to, then I think, he will definitely be a good addition. Career 258 average. Last year he was at 206. So I definitely think he has the potential to be their starting catcher and have good performance back there. But he just needs to, kind of come out of that slump that he was in last year and come out swinging this year. And on top of that, a lot of people say that the Mets lost a bunch in pitching this year, via free agency, whatever it was, that they let a lot of people go. They made a lot of that up in trades in the offseason. So if you didn't see that, you are going to see that during the season. You're going to see familiar names coming out of the bullpen. They made some really good moves in there that I felt like. And I think that they definitely are a playoff contender. There's definitely room there for growth still a little bit, but remember, we still have a whole 162 games to play. The trade deadline doesn't hit till the All-Star break, so I think they definitely have time. The Yankees are my number 3 team on this list. For me, the big one was them signing Carlos Rodon. He was a great pitcher in San Francisco. He went 14-8 with a 2.88 ERA. I think that guy is going to give you a solid performance. And now on top of that, you still have Garrett Cole, you have Nestor Cortez. These are guys, top of the line pitchers, and then you add Rodon in there as well. I think that is going to be a rotation that you definitely have to look out for. No doubt on that part. Obviously, they re-signed Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo. So for me, these are guys that you couldn't lose. If you lost this, you lost your season, especially Aaron Judge, right? With the performance that he put up, is he going to repeat, another 60 home run season? Maybe not. But if that guy puts up 45, 55, home runs, that is way above average than what you're going to see from any other team. So you give him the opportunity with guys on bases and give him the opportunity to smack the ball, you're going to see, another 130 RBI season from him. I mean, that was just unrealistic, but, to ask for. It's unrealistic to ask for out of him, but somehow he managed to do it. It was it was a dream come true. It's kind of one of those things where you sit there and you go to a game or you see it on your TV and you think Mike Trout caliber, right? This guy's hitting so well. This guy's playing defense so well that we may not see it again in our lifetime. We may not see another guy come up and hit close to 70 home runs. It just might not happen. It's so few and far between. Moving on to the next one. Our next winner is the Philadelphia Phillies. They really fixed their losses for me there. They added Taijuan Walker from the Diamondbacks, Matt Strahm, and Trey Turner. Obviously, Trey Turner was their big one because, you add them in with Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, and Nicholas Castellanos, and you have a solid team there, especially Trey Turner at the top of that lineup. He's going to give you a good on-base percentage. He's going to, steal bases for you. He's going to help you be aggressive in the ball game. And these big bats that are going to come up behind him are going to play a huge role in those late games that we play throughout the season. After the All-Star break, when games really start coming down in August and September, he's going to be a big performer, and they're going to rely on him quite a bit to be on base. Texas Rangers for me are the last one on my list. Obviously, they signed Jacob deGrom. There was some concerns with him that he was not going to be able to play this season, right? Because he had the injury. Everybody was freaking out. We were like, oh, there he goes again. Well, good news. I saw that he had his second bullpen session. So he is, on track to be able to start for opening day, and he will be good to go. And I mean, that is just a huge opportunity for them to get him. I mean, it seemed like right after the season ended that everyone knew that he was going to the Rangers, and, it never let up. And then all of a sudden, that was kind of the first big splash in the market, right? He went to Texas, and then all the other dominoes kind of fell after that. I believe Trey Turner was the second one to go after that. So, it was kind of just waiting to see who was going to do what and where they were going to land. And then the rest of the dominoes followed after that. They added Andrew Heaney, Jake Ordizzi, and Martin Perez. I mean, these are guys that are top-notch level players. I think, obviously they needed to fix their rotation. They were like somewhere along the lines of fifth in runs scored last year in all of baseball, but like 17th or something like that in terms of pitching and ERA. So there was a huge drop there from pitching to runs scored. They obviously had the offense, but they did not have the pitching. They went out and spent big money. They didn't just have, John Gray at, $4 million. So it's they went out and spent the big bucks, and they're expecting it to pay off this season. And as they should, if you're going to spend millions of dollars on somebody, especially, close to that 100 million mark, 200 million mark, you better expect guys to perform. Now we have to get into our losers of the offseason. So my first one on this list, okay, is the Arizona Diamondbacks. It irks me to see that they didn't make any moves, namely because in 2021, they went 52 and 110. They lost 110 games, but then they came back in, that was 2021. And then in 2022, they go 22 more wins than they had the year prior. So now they go 74 and 88. So you made some improvements there, and then you choose not to do anything in the offseason, really. I know they got Kyle Lewis via trade. So that was, a good addition for them. But I'm sorry, Kyle Lewis is not a guy that you think, hey, you know what? We're going to build our team around him and he's going to put us on his shoulders and take us to the playoffs. Kyle Lewis is not an Aaron Judge. Kyle Lewis is not a Shohei Ohtani. They needed to make some bigger moves than that, and I was very disappointed to see that they didn't. My next one on here, my next loser is the Baltimore Orioles. I was really actually hurt to have to put this one on here because of the, historic kind of season they had last year, right? It was crazy that they come back and win all these games. Nobody expected them to have a winning season or anything like that. It was a great season. It was just fun to watch them, especially with all their young guys getting in there, to experience that kind of winning mentality. I think that was very important. But obviously, 2022, they went 83-79. So going 83-79, nobody expected that. They barely made it over the 500 hump, but they did it. And I think people expected them to be 15 games below 500. So that was a huge performance for them. Adley Rutschman being one of their guys in there, I think that's huge for them. He's going to be a huge contributor again this season. He only played in 113 games. He hit 13 home runs and batted a .254 average. So, and 42 RBIs. There's not much you can ask out of a guy, especially a catcher and, someone so young coming up to put up numbers like that. I think that was huge. And I think that, it wasn't a fluke. Obviously guys are going to make adjustments on him and he's going to have to make the adjustments, but he is the kind of player that I definitely feel like is going to go forward and make those adjustments to the pitchers. And he may even make them during the game. He goes back in and watches a strikeout that he had and says, okay, you know what? I noticed that they're pitching me a little bit more outside or a little bit more inside than they were last year. He's going to make that adjustment. Grayson Rodriguez, he's a huge guy that's going to come up for them. We need to make sure that, he gets to the major leagues. He went 6-1 in AAA last year with a 2.20 ERA and 69 innings pitched. So I think it's going to be very important for the Orioles to make it a priority to get these guys to the major leagues. Especially guys that are already in AAA, right? Like you're not rushing a guy from, AA or single A and trying to rush him into the MLB. I think this guy is already well-maintained as a pitcher. He's already proven, that he can handle the pressure situations. So I definitely think he will be a good addition to their rotation. They had Gunnar Henderson in the MLB last year. He only played in 34 games, but he had 30 hits in 34 games and 4 homers and batted .259. So at an MLB level, coming from him, from somebody so young, I was excited to see that. So they have all these young guys, right? And all these rookies and prospects that they can bring up. You got Cedric Mullins in there still. He's, a fantastic player as well. And you didn't make any moves to kind of, bring people in, and develop around them. You're going to have all these prospects that you want to build your team around, but you didn't make any moves in the offseason to, really kind of get guys in there and say, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This is what the postseason is like. Having your veteran guys in there is super important. And I felt like they could have made some really good moves this offseason that really would have benefited their prospects that they have coming up. And I mean, let's be honest, they haven't had a winning season since 2016. So this to me was like, hey, this is the year that you need to, go for it. No one expected you to have a winning season. You did. You have the prospects. You have the young talent. Now bring in some veteran status around them. Bring in, some stability that they can rely on, and have those guys learn from them, and build some respect in the clubhouse and build a winning mentality. And to see them that they didn't make any moves, it concerns me that maybe they're still thinking that they're in a rebuild phase, that concerns me a little bit, because I do want to see the Baltimore Orioles be a little bit more successful this season. I would definitely like to see them in the playoffs. That's no doubt. The Dodgers are another team on this list for me as a loser, right? The Dodgers, they lost to the San Diego Padres in the postseason. And I know that hurt a lot of people. And especially losing to the San Diego Padres the way that they did. And then you don't go out and make any moves after that to kind of, counter, what they've done in the offseason. I mean, San Diego has gone out left and right to build their team in the past few off seasons. I think that would be a mistake not to add, to their already very talented team. But there was so much talent out there available this offseason, and it felt like that the Dodgers just kind of sat on their hands and didn't make any big moves. Obviously, they got Noah Syndergaard via free agency and JD Martinez. Again, both of those guys for me. And they also re-signed Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw is not the pitcher that he used to be. JD Martinez is not the player that he used to be. And I don't think Noah Syndergaard ever really lived up to what he was supposed to be. I think everyone expected him to be, another Jacob deGrom type, another Shohei Ohtani type, and be that guy on the mound. And he just didn't live up to the hype. And so, now he's kind of bounced around a little bit. And so it didn't really excite me when I saw them make that move. They lost 7 notable players in the offseason, and then you added 2. If you don't count re-signing Clayton Kershaw, you added 2 guys via free agency here, and you lost, 7 guys, and that to me just didn't make any sense. I was just kind of like a head scratcher, and I'm like, what are they doing? And it almost seems like they think that they're going to beat San Diego with the team that they have. And that's not saying that they can't. The Dodgers are a great team, and they have a ton of talent. And we've seen, San Diego kind of choke before a few times. So it wouldn't surprise me if, they didn't make many moves because they're confident with the team that they have. But I just felt like there was too much opportunity there and they didn't take any. So that's why they're on my losers list. These last 2 are just kind of obvious for me. The Oakland A's, they had like one of the lowest attendance averages in all of baseball last year. So I felt like, they owed it to their fans to make some moves, and I didn't really see them, kind of get anything going. And that really kind of grinded my gears a little bit, right? Because, if I'm an Oakland A's fan, I want to see my team win. We were close to the postseason before, and then we, kind of got rid of everybody. And now suppose we're in this rebuild phase again, and you don't make any moves, right? So you're in a rebuild phase. To me, you don't have a stacked farm system. So I don't see too many guys that are going to come up and perform for you, especially in a way that, you can just build an entire team around. I don't see you having a core of 3 or 4 guys. So that to me was just a huge heartbreaker for the Oakland A's fans. I'm so sorry for you. That was terrible. The next one on my list here is the Chicago White Sox. I was real disappointed with the White Sox because I wanted to see them make a few more moves as well. But they should have had a better season last year. There shouldn't have been a lot of talk about, they were actually last season at the beginning of the year, they were projected, I think, one of the highest odds to win the World Series last year. So the fact that they had the season that they did and the performance that they did, and now granted, you can base it off of injuries and stuff like that, and I totally understand. You still got Grandal, you still got Roberts, Jimenez, all these guys, and you anticipate building your team around them, and I totally get that. But I felt like you had a huge opportunity here to have resources in your back pocket, and you chose not to take them. And now you're going to be in that same boat again, where if you get, if Roberts gets injured or Jimenez gets injured again, which, they've been known for having injuries in the past few seasons. And then there's always all these talks. Okay, well, this person's injured. So who are you going to trade for? I remember last year they had AJ Pollock. I'm sorry, but he is not a sufficient replacement for Luis Roberts. He's not. And that was, again, a huge mistake on their part if they thought that he was going to fill a gap for them. It just wasn't smart to me in terms of baseball and in terms of winning, right? You had these odds of winning the World Series. You had your fans pumped up, and then you go out and have just a way below average season and don't even make the playoffs. So, obviously congratulations to the Twins on, just taking that over. And the worst part is though, is that entire division is so shaky and weak that, it should have been a no brainer that the Sox were going to win that division. So it was a bummer for me not to see them make any moves with what they had out there, but that's, again, something that the fans are going to have to deal with. It's heartbreak. And, I think a lot of that has to do with ownership, and you need to kind of look at them and ownership needs to reevaluate themselves and kind of start taking into consideration that, hey, fans want to see a winning team. They're not just going to want to keep coming back to a stadium that isn't iconic, right? It's not Wrigley Field. It's not Fenway Park. So if you have a losing season, people aren't just going to keep coming back, and you're not going to you're not going to be selling tickets because, people are there to see the stadium and not the team. That's just not the way it works with, Oakland and the Sox. And now they're, Oakland's focused on moving and stuff like that. So these last two teams were just absolute losers for me. And I think they let their fans down considerably. So we're going to move on now. We have our next segment here, which is going to be the rules of the game, right? Obviously, there have been new rule changes in the MLB, and a lot of people have strong feelings about them. And I think that they should. It's a game has been played a certain way for 100 years. Why change it? But I think that there is reasoning behind it. But as we all know, that there is the time clock change. There is the size of the bases that changed, and then the shift ban. So right away, Major League Baseball said, hey, we're going to do no grace periods, right? The reason that they're doing no grace periods here is they want teams to lock in right away. This is the way it's going to be in the regular season. Adjust now. So this way, when, opening day comes around, you're already prepared. Now, I think there's going to be a strong struggle here for guys that are going to be playing in the World Baseball Classic and stuff like that, because they're not going to have these violations and rules in those games. And so if you got guys that are coming back to the team and they were playing a certain way in the World Baseball Classic, now they have to readjust to opening day. It's going to be difficult for them. So the way that the pitch clock works is that it's 15 seconds with no runners on base and 20 seconds with a runner on base. And the violation will be an automatic ball or strike, depending on whether it goes towards the pitcher or the batter. Manny Machado was the first one to get a violation in the MLB, so that will go down in history for him, and I know he said something along the lines that, he was going to be down in the count a lot this year, just because, he likes to take his time and stuff like that. But even in that at bat where he went down 0-1, came up and drove a single into left field. So he wasn't worried about being behind in the count, but I definitely think it'll make a factor on guys. And speaking of Manny Machado, I just want to throw out there that he did re-sign with the Orioles. He did re-sign with the San Diego Padres, and he had an 11-year, $350 million extension. So that was great. I know there was a lot of haters out there that were saying, he's opting out of his contract because he's not going to play in San Diego. They didn't win the World Series, so now he's going to try and go somewhere else. He was dedicated to his team, and I don't think that there was any doubt about that. He blatantly said on there that, hey, there's money out there. And he wanted to get that money, and he did it. And the Padres didn't want to let him go, and he re-signed with them, and everything's all good. He got the extension that he wanted. Now, going back into the rules, right? So with that pitch clock, there's been a lot of players, a lot of coaches saying you could definitely feel it. Craig Counsell quoted that you can feel the difference. There's no doubt about it, end quote. So, for a coach to be telling you that, you can definitely feel it, imagine how it is on the players, right? He's, trying to focus on, what he's going to do next with his team and things of that nature. And then you have a batter in there who's trying to hit the ball, right? He's focusing on the game plan, and the batter's focusing on the game. in the ball and putting it in play. So there's a bunch of different distractions. So to hear the coach say that, hey, you can definitely feel it, that was kind of a shocker to me, because I didn't think that the coaches were going to be as affected as the players were. So the batters have to be ready by the time that the clock hits 8 seconds. And what ready means in terms of the rules is they have to be engaged with the pitcher. If you are not looking at the pitcher, you are not in the batter's box, and you are not engaged at that 8-second mark, then you are going to get an automatic strike. Now, I definitely feel like that, maybe it's a little short. I don't think it would hurt them to add 5 seconds on each. So make it 20 with no runners on and 25 with a runner on base, because there's definitely a rush to the game. And there's no doubt about that. You can feel it. Even from a fan standpoint, I could see the pitchers, kind of looking over the pitch clock, looking back, and it gives them another thing to worry about on top of everything else. So pitchers are going to have to execute their pitches so much better, because they're going to be rushed in their process. Is it going to affect their mechanics? Is it going to affect the way that they, their release points, things of that nature? Is it going to get into their heads mentally? These are all things that I think will be affected in the game. And I think that, we're going to have to take into consideration as a fan base and say, yeah, this season might've been a rough season for him. And then maybe even, as the season goes on or next year, say, okay, I think we need to reevaluate this and see if he makes any improvements now that he's had a chance to adjust to this. I mean, these guys are making millions of dollars. They should be able to adjust to the game, but definitely, like I said, that pitch clock, I felt it as a fan just watching the game. So I can only imagine how the coaches and the batters feel. And just to give you an idea of how some of the batters feel, I have a quote here from Kyle Tucker, who's the all-star outfielder with the Astros. He went on to say that these pitchers are the best pitchers in the world, and you're giving them more of an advantage, and you have to rush back in the box. To me, obviously, he's saying that the pitchers get an advantage. I don't know if that's true, right? Because I feel like that they're also feeling rushed. Yes, the pitcher doesn't have the time to, walk circles in the mound, and, stare you down or have stare downs with the umpire. And while people may like that, aspect of the game, MLB was saying, hey, we're going to make this game shorter. And so these little options that we have to take, these little snippets out are going to make a difference. And they definitely did make a difference. I mean, the games themselves. So the first 6 games on Saturday, 12 games on Saturday. Okay. So 12 games on Saturday, 6 of them were under 2.5 hours. And then another 6 of them were less than 2 hours and 45 minutes. So the average game last year was 3 hours and 3 minutes. So did it work? Well, out of 17 games on Saturday, that in a sense you would say, hey, yeah, it did. And then to even go forward with that, this weekend we had 35 games played. The average time of a game in these first 35 spring training games was 2 hours and 37 minutes. So I think that was, if that was their goal, well, then you definitely achieved it. So, I mean, good job on that part, right? And now we have to wait and see how players and coaches and umpires and managers or owners and stuff like that, how everyone's going to adjust to it. So MLB got what they wanted. Now it's time for the rest of the operations of MLB to adjust with it. So speaking of these violations, right? There was one game in particular that I had to talk about today because to me, it ended on a crazy note. And what immediately went through my mind is, what if that was a playoff game? What if that was the end of somebody's season? So Braves versus Red Sox. It's tied 6-6, bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. Bases loaded, full count, like, the way that everybody dreams it up in your backyard, right? That's what it is right now. And umpire John Lipka ended the game in a 6-6 tie with 2 outs and bases loaded. He stated that the batter, second baseman Cal Connolly, was not ready in time. Now, when I was watching that game, I felt that he was pretty engaged with, reasonably so, but I mean, I don't know. As an umpire, that for me, that's a hard call to make, especially, I mean, in spring training, maybe not, like they're trying to get guys used to this, but man, if you see that during the season and that is an impact for you, like here it ended in a tie, no big deal, right? But in a game where it's 7-6 or 6-5, right? It's going to make a major impact. And I feel like this definitely adds some stress onto the umpires. And I think the fans, are going to have to understand that it's not them enforcing this, right? They're just a part of the game like the players are. So whatever the rules that are being enforced, they're being enforced down on them, and then they're having to rule it out to the players. So, you don't see owners out here, your commissioners coming out onto the field and say, hey, we're enforcing this, right? It's always the umpires and the managers that have to deliver the bad news. That's just the way it goes. That's the chain of command for you. So as we went over the time of games and the time clock, right? So the next rule that they had on there was the shift ban. For me, I think the shift ban is good. I enjoy it, right? Because, and I actually read something too that, Aaron Judge and I apparently have the same exact point of view, because we both feel that it's going to give the opportunity fans to see more athletic plays, right? The guys aren't just lining up, that it's not a wall of guys, on one side of the field saying, we know you're going to hit it over here, and one of us is going to get it in our glove, and we're just going to stand here, right? You're going to see more of those Jeter throws. You're going to see more dives, more crazy double plays and things of that nature. I think in this aspect, the shift ban will bring back a big part of the game that we've been missing. We have power hitters, right? And everyone was always saying, well, it's either home run or an out. I don't really think it was home run or an out. The problem was that there was so much shifting going on that, it was a home run or an out, because they couldn't, a normal ball that they would get through a hole wasn't there. And you're literally taking a player out of their specific position and putting them in a designated spot where they don't belong. To me, that's cheating, right? Obviously, it's been going on a while, so you could say, oh, well, they've been cheating this long and, no one's ever had a problem with it before. Well, I think that over time it has gotten worse, and fans, some fans are starting to get fed up with it. I think it's probably drawn down the line 50-50 of, our fans upset, our fans happy with it. I think so. One of the stats that I had was just absolutely crazy to me, was that in 2017, there were over 22,000 shifts for the season, right? 22,000 shifts across 162 game season in 2017. That, to me, that's pretty big, right? In 2022, there was over 60,000 shifts. So that tripled across, that timeline there, right? Like, I mean, that's 20,000 to 60,000. At this point, everyone knows where you're going to hit the ball. We'll bring in an extra outfielder. We'll put all the guys on their, one side of the field, and nobody's playing their position anymore. And that's where you had, these big hitters that were trying to lay down bunts and things like that. And you don't want to see that. I don't want to see, my guy who's supposed to hit 40 plus home runs trying to lay down a bunt because they're shifted. And that's not the way that the game works. He knows that you're shifting on him. So he's just trying to find a way to get an advantage back in his game. And to me, obviously that was fair, but man, that is a hard thing to do, to just be like, hey, I'm going to bunt it over there and hopefully get on base. I mean, it helps your on base percentage, no doubt, and maybe the stats for the game. But when it comes to time where, you need to drive runs in and things like that, it definitely makes an impact, and it will this year too. So we said that, obviously it's definitely going to give you the opportunity to see more athletic plays. No doubt there. I feel like that's a given. I feel like what this is really going to do too is that pitchers are going to have to make better pitches. They're going to have to go out and really execute their game to a top-notch level now, because Before, they had guys, hey, we know he's, 75 or 73% of the time he hits it over here, and we got the right side covered and up the middle covered. Don't worry about the other side, And that gave pitchers kind of this calmness that, yeah, pretty much the infield's cover. If he hits it on the ground, we're good. So I really feel like that it's going to give pitchers a challenge this year, and we're going to see a bunch of different styles of pitching that, maybe worked last season and the seasons prior, that pitchers are going to end up changing. I felt like fastballs were at like their highest rate that they've ever been in the past few seasons. And I feel like now that's going to change. You're going to start having to see these guys throw more of their breaking balls. They're going to have to lean into more of their repertoire because they need to get these guys out, and they can't take a chance of a guy hitting it up the middle or through the hole. So I think that'll make a huge impact on the pitchers. I feel like with that, if you think they, whoever wins the Cy Young this year, I feel like that they really earned it, no doubt. We went over the amount of shifts that they had, and like I said, that was just absolutely crazy. Obviously, for batters, this is going to be a huge opportunity for them. Batting averages will go up. We saw guys hitting, below 220, 230, and, sure, they were putting up, 30, 40, bombs, but it doesn't look good when you're batting below, like a 240 average. So I want to see these guys, I want to see more offense. I want to see, batters take this opportunity to get to that level of a 300 batting average season. Like I said, Aaron Judge did it, and that's why I feel like this guy is just built different, right? Aaron Judge, he doesn't care about the shift. He'll hit it over your head. He'll hit it, to all different directions of the field. That guy is built different. So is Mike Trout. But these are still behind them, the guys that might not be as talented as them or have, just the same grace that, the gift that God gave those guys might not be as good for the other ones. And they're still the best. They're still some of the best players in the world. But they should really jump on this opportunity. This is going to go on the back of your bubblegum card. This is going to follow you throughout your career. Take the opportunity to, get that batting average up. I mean, rules seem to change all the time now in MLB, so you never know what's going to happen next. You have an opportunity here to definitely build some opportunity, or you have some opportunity to build up your offense, and I think you should definitely take it. RBIs will obviously go up. I feel like, especially because stolen bases are going to be a huge aspect here too with the shift ban. I think that you're going to see a lot more hit and runs and things of that nature. I definitely feel like the coaches are going to be more aggressive in the game now than they were in the past previous seasons, because now this levels that playing field back out where it's like, hey, this is the way that the game was supposed to be played. You have your position here, you have your position there, and I'm going to hit it. And if you can get to it, then I'm out. But if you can't get to it, then that's a hit for me, and I did my job, and, I'm praised as a hitter. So I definitely feel like that there's going to be some admiration going both ways. We're going to see a lot of fans saying, hey, he's the best infielder, he's the best outfielder. We want to see, Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, Fernando Tatis, all these guys, we want to see them make the incredible plays. Well, those incredible plays get taken away when you're doing these shifts. So I think that this is definitely going to be a fun season for us for sure. So MLB wanted shorter times in the games. Check. They wanted more action. Okay. Yeah. Check. Pitchers are going to have to be better. They're going to have to be faster. So again, they met that aspect. I feel like that some of these rule changes are, for me, those two, right? The shift ban and the time clock were huge, right? I think that makes a huge impact in the game. For me, the larger bases did not. I could have lived without that one. The only thing that I really truly believe that it will prevent is more injuries going into first base. We're going to see a lot of less, spiked heels, right? First baseman's trying to make a play, runners coming down the line. he's on a full-on sprint, hyperextending his knee and stuff like that, doesn't really have control where his foot's going, and ends up spiking the first baseman. He's down. We don't know, what kind of injury he'll sustain or how long he'll be out, how fast he'll recover. So for me, okay, yes, definitely probably less injuries. But if that's the case, why didn't we just do a larger first base? If you just want to make a base bigger, just make it bigger for first base. And then, after that, it still kind of levels that playing field for, stealing bases and so forth going forward. I thought that would have been a huge win for them if they would have went that route. For me, a lot of people, oh, well, the bases, now it makes the distance shorter, stuff like that. I don't think that we're going to see a huge, difference in the game as far as that's concerned. But I definitely think that, there'll be less injuries, which I am happy about. I think that will definitely benefit guys. So, all right. So we're going to move on now to our spring training games. We had a lot happen this weekend, and there's a lot to cover. So I'm not going to cover every single team, but I have picked out a few games for us that I think will be pretty good. So Friday's games, we had, well, I wanted to get into this real quick before I go on, because I did forget to mention this. So we said the MLB wanted more action. Okay, on Friday, on those first two games that we had, the Texas versus Kansas City, it had 17 hits, 11 runs, and it ended in 2.5 hours. The Seattle versus San Diego Padres, it had 16 hits, 5 runs, and also 2.5 hours. So again, credit the MLB. That's what they wanted to do. They did it. Good job. Okay, we're moving on. So the Mets, they won 6-5. Scherzer K'd 5. I definitely felt that was good. They did a really good job there. It was good to see Scherzer come out. Really good to see him put on, his work on display. And again, I think the Mets are going to have a great season, playoff contenders as usual, especially these last few years. Going forward, the Phillies, they beat the Twins 10-8. Nicholas Castellanos, Cody Clemens, Ethan Wilson, all homered in the game. Ethan Wilson had a grand slam. That was pretty huge for them. And then as far as the Twins aspect, obviously they had 8 runs. They didn't do any, they didn't not have offense. So on the Twins side, Elliott Soto also had a grand slam. So that was really good for them. It was a good game to watch. It was a lot of offense. And in terms of shift and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about that when they're hitting the ball out of the park, right? So I don't think there was an issue there. I think there might have been an effect of the pitch clock there, where maybe they were feeling rushed. So, they were just, they weren't having the best movement on their pitches. They weren't in the best mentality. They were trying to adjust, kind of distracted. So I think that might have played a part in it, but it was definitely good to see. The D-backs versus Padres. You ready for this one? 18-6. Padres win. Juan Soto had a 3-run homer and a 2-run double. Really good to see that guy, getting his bat going. He has one of the best eyes in baseball, right? He has one of the best walk rates. That he gets on base all the time. And for me, it was super frustrating when his bat, was not as active as it was when he first went over to the Padres. A lot of people were upset with that. I was upset with that, but I was actually more upset for him. I know the type of player that he is. I know what he's capable of. And, he's also one of those one-of-a-kind players. So to see his bat coming alive this early in spring training, I'm thrilled about that. Behind him, Trent Grisham also had a 3-run homer. And then on top of all that, right, the Padres had 20 hits. So while we talked about those games on Friday, Kansas City and the Seattle games having 17, 16 hits, the Padres had 20 hits alone on their side. So they killed it. Way to go, San Diego. Good to see your bats coming alive. Moving on here, we had the Angels and the White Sox. The Angels beat the White Sox 7-0. Rendon and Renfroe both homered. They went back-to-back, actually, which was really cool to see. Ohtani tripled on the first pitch of the game, so that was really cool. And Trout also had an RBI double. So all the guys that they wanted production out of, they saw that very early in spring training. I feel like that's important. So it was really good to see these guys coming out swinging and having a good performance. The Baltimore Orioles, they won, but that's actually our next topic here. So we're going on to the top 3 underrated teams. So that's going to be our segue there. So for me, that's where I went with the Baltimore Orioles. The Baltimore Orioles, to me, are probably one of the most underrated teams right now, just mainly because of the season that they had. They still have a huge opportunity that if they make some moves in the offseason, if they make some moves mid-season, this is going to be a dangerous team. No doubt in my mind. I could definitely see them with, maybe, 8 to 10 wins plus what they had over last year, which would put them in that 90 win category. So seeing these guys make a wild card spot to me is not out of the question whatsoever. I definitely think that they will have an opportunity to play really well. And not to mention we talked about it earlier, but they just have prospect up the wazoo. So another underrated team for me, obviously, is my Chicago Cubs. And now that's not just because I'm biased to the Chicago Cubs. Like I said, I felt like they went out and made some really good moves, right? They went out and got Dansby Swanson. They went out and got Eric Hosmer, Trey Mancini, Jameson Taillon, and Cody Bellinger. So these were all big moves to me, especially if the offense production that they can get out of Mancini and out of, Bellinger and Hosmer. Hosmer's a great defender. I give him that, no doubt. So is Bellinger. So if they can just get their bats going, then I definitely feel like that will be a low risk, high reward for the Cubs, which could definitely put them on top in a shaky NL Central division. Obviously, we know the Cardinals now have Wilson Contreras. They now have Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, right? They're stacked. They got some MVPs on that team. So it would have not surprised me to see St. Louis win the division. But I'm just saying that the Cubs, if they get like the best production out of the guys that they brought in this year, then they could have a chance to at least win the division. But if not, definitely have a spot at a wild card. My third and my final top underrated team this year is going to be the Texas Rangers, right? So the Texas Rangers, for me, went out and made some huge moves. We already talked about, that they have the offense, and especially that combo duo that they have at second and short with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. One of the best shortstop, second baseman duos out there. I love it. They got good bats. They have offensive production. I don't think that they're done making moves. They made as much moves they wanted to make in the offseason, but I think if their season goes the way that they're expecting it to, they will make a couple more moves midseason here to kind of, make sure that they're going to clinch that playoff berth and get in there. Obviously, with the additions of Jacob deGrom, if he can stay healthy, that will be huge. That's going to be their main thing. Keep that guy healthy and have him be one of your best, your dominant starting guy, number one, top of the rotation. Last year, they had a 239 team average, batting average. They do have to get that up a little bit, right? They were 8th in home runs in all of baseball. So the power's there, the runs are there. I have no doubt about that. But the batting average, if we can get that up a little bit higher, which I don't think will be a problem now with that shift ban, I think the Texas Rangers are going to have a real shot. And I don't know if a lot of people knew this or not, but the Texas Rangers were the number one team in stolen bases last year. So definitely watch out for them on the base path. If other teams are watching, definitely be careful with the Rangers out there, because I think I got it on here. They stole 128 bases last year. I mean, that is just ridiculous. So those are my top 3 underrated teams. Moving forward here, this is our last segment that we're going to go into. Is going to be our World Series predictions. Yes, I am going to throw it out there this early. I like to throw it out there this early because I feel like, when we look back, we see how right on or how off we were just in left field that was. So for me, I could not decide for this episode on just one team. I narrowed it down to two, so don't judge me. I will do an update episode as we get further in the season and kind of lock that in a little bit better. But my World Series winner prediction here is going to be either the Texas Rangers or the San Diego Padres. And like I said, I feel like the Texas Rangers are probably one of the most underrated teams in the MLB. So I definitely feel like that they're going to have a chip on their shoulder and they're going to be playing for a ring, no doubt. Don't be surprised to see them in the playoffs. Don't be surprised to see them have one of the lowest ERAs in baseball. I mean, those guys added a ton of pitching this year. They have a very scary rotation. I would be afraid to play them myself. And as for the Padres, man, I mean, they speak for themselves, right? That they got the power, they have the gold gloves, they have the fielding, they have everything that they need, the speed, the power, the fielding, it's all there. So they are an all-around team. Their focus is going to be, making sure that the Dodgers either don't make the playoffs or they take care of them pretty early in the playoffs. So that's going to be their focus for them. I think, again, those are my left field prediction is the Texas Rangers. My, pretty confident prediction is the San Diego Padres. But it would not surprise me to see the Texas Rangers up there. So I want to take some time real quick to go ahead and thank Tony for producing this show tonight. This was our first episode of Call to the Pen. It's been a pleasure talking with everybody, and I hope to see you guys next episode. Again, Tony, thank you so much. And my name is Austin Stantz, and we will see you on Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central. And so I look forward to seeing you guys Thursday. We'll talk more baseball.
Whole sports, all plays. Yeah. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces.